Good morning. My name is Michael Leeserman. Happy Friday. It's December 22nd, 2023, and today's Trial Guides tip of the day is from David Wenner's video, Inside the Juror's Mind, What Every Trial Lawyer Needs to Know. David Wenner is here with us this morning. Good morning, David. Could you please read the tip and talk with us about it?
Yes, thank you. Good morning to you, Michael. Frame the defendant's conduct as a repeated intentional choice with conscious knowledge of the risk of harm. And I could talk for an hour about this, and this grew out of our jury research that I did with Greg Cusimano in the mid 90s. And we had the luxury of doing 25 focus groups on the same fact pattern because we were doing it for the research purposes. And one of the things that we found out is that the jurors changed their judgment based upon how the case was presented to them. So you change the order of the evidence, change the judgment. And one of the things that we found is that we know from the research that intentional conduct provides a greater amount of compensation than a similar kind of conduct when it's framed as an omission. So jurors will get more money for acts versus omission. And the problem with what we were seeing is that the way trial lawyers were framing their cases, where the doctor failed to act, the trucker failed to do something, the product manufacturer failed to give this warning. So instead, we tested it, and we talked about reframing it as an intentional choice. And the reason that was important, so rather than saying they failed to act, they chose to act, they elected to act, and things of that nature. And research shows that people are willing to give more compensation for harm that results from an intentional act rather than an omission, a failure to act. And why this was so important is because when we did this research, there was so much focus on the plaintiff's conduct, and the fact that jurors were particularly harsh when it came to the plaintiff, but not similarly harsh when it came to the defendant. And one of the problems that we had in the 90s was all this tort reform rhetoric. So people would want to undo the plaintiff's conduct. They want to blame the plaintiff. There was this blame the victim thing going on. And so the way we tried to mitigate the effect of that was to tell a story that was the product of intentional choices. And so rather than focus the jury's attention on the plaintiff's conduct, what we did is see if we could somehow manipulate the evidence in a way that would change the judgment. And so one of the things that we did is said, how do we make the plaintiff less visible, less available, less salient in the story? Because the first thing jurors wanted to do was to blame the plaintiff. So this is what we did. And we knew that personal responsibility was a big issue. So, to show that that the plaintiff was personally responsible in controlling for the risk and trying to prevent the harm. But the big thing that was really helpful was we discovered, because again, we were doing the same focus groups, same case over and over again, that if we focus the jurors' attention on that day, the day of the incident, the day of the harm, the jurors tend to blame the plaintiff. So the question is, how could we change the focus of their attention and then change their judgment? And one of the ways we found we were able to do that back in the days of tort reform is to start the story long before the day of the harm. And so the story became, the defendant made a series of intentional, repeated decisions over a long period of time that made it foreseeable that this harm would occur. We just didn't know who and when, and now we do. And so rather than starting the story with the day of the wreck, in a products liability case, oftentimes, in a rollover case, the plaintiff has done something, gone off the side of the road without, any explanation, or in a medical malpractice, the harm that occurred that day. rather than starting that day, start with the defendant's conduct and what decisions led up to that harm, making it foreseeable and preventable. And the more you do that, the less the jurors are focused on the plaintiff's conduct and the more they're focused on the defendant's conduct. So that's where that came from.
That is, it's brilliant, and I hear lawyers talking now about choices, and it's great to be reminded that this is really comes as a result of the research you and Greg did so many years ago. And when you really think about it, what you're really doing, I think, is a root cause analysis. You're saying what really is behind this, and then we've now come to accept, thanks to your research, that of course jurors are going to find negligence or even punish when there's a conscious choice versus just a failure to act. So thank you for this research over the years. Thank you for reading today's tip and for being here, David.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's pause, take a deep breath together, and just appreciate the fact that we are alive this Friday. May we use the time we have today to help reduce suffering in the world, to repair the world. May we fiercely and compassionately advocate for our clients and champion their stories. I'm going to ring a bell 3 times now. This can take you into a meditation practice, a prayer practice, or just remind you it's Friday. Wake up, go out, do good things, and have fun while you're doing it. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.